Welcome back to Shattering Myths, into the Sports in the News segment, one of my favorites each week. We have Aaron and Scott both with us. The first topic I'd like to kick around is Hall of Fame golfer Phil Mickelson was approached not once but twice by the FBI, and then had some anonymous FBI informant tell us that he's being investigated for insider trading. What do you guys think?
I don't know a ton about it, but from what I've read, it's I'm not really seeing it because it sounds like he knows a guy that knows a guy.
Yeah.
And the guy that he knows and this other guy are. They've been linked, but there's no link to him and the guy that did the insider trading.
You know, first of all, the icon is the individual that we're talking about. Icon is infamous in the United States. I think he's the 18th wealthiest American, and Icon does two things. One is he makes large investments in companies that don't want anyone to interfere with the way they do business, recognizing that it's a form of blackmail, and they call it green mail with Icon. But he then has the company's boards buy his shares back at a premium just to have him go away. That's blackmail. But it's legal in the United States. You can engage in blackmail of that kind, and it's not a criminal act. The second thing that Icon does is if he sees a company that he thinks is underperforming because they're not running the business in a manner that is maximizing shareholder return. You know, they might be running the company in a manner that is best for the long-term interests of the employees or the viability of the business, but not maxing it for short-term shareholder gain. He'll make large investments in those companies so he can control the board, like he did so with Dell here recently. And Dell, as a result of what he did, decided, we just don't need this aggravation. Let's take the company private. And so that's Icon. That's who he is. So he made a decision that he didn't like the way that Clorox was being run. So he decided that he was going to go after Clorox, which means that the moment you know that he's going to do this, then the stock price goes up. Because, here you've got a guy that's going to send the stock price up by buying lots of shares. Now, the fellow that Phil Mickelson knows, now Phil Mickelson never met Icon. They have no relationship whatsoever, so Phil Mickelson wasn't told what Icon is going to do. But he plays golf with a guy named Billy Walters. Billy Walters owns a bunch of golf courses in Las Vegas. Billy Walters is probably the most famous gambler in the United States, too. The only large gambler that every year wins. I mean, he's the first gambler to actually use computer analysis to decide where he's going to bet. But Billy Walters is a huge philanthropist. His number one philanthropy or nonprofit happens to be a home for mentally handicapped children in the Las Vegas area. It's probably the best in the world of its kind. And Phil Mickelson plays golf with him because the guy owns golf courses. Now, let's say that Phil Mickelson was playing golf with Billy Walters, and Billy Walters says, "Hey, they're just chatting, and Phil says, hey, you're buying these stocks these days, still playing the market, got any stock tips for me?" And let's say the guy says, yeah, I'm buying Clorox. I think that it's underpriced. Would you think you'd be a criminal if you bought Clorox?
Well, no, yeah. It sounds like a conversation that me and you might have.
Absolutely.
Hey, what do you think about this? I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't. I would avoid that. Or, well, right now this is pretty low, but I think it's going to take off. And even if you told me, such and such is going to, it sounds like such and such is going to invest in it.
Right.
That seems like a good play.
Do you think that anybody is playing the stock market that isn't attempting to get tips that would make their investments more likely to succeed? Wouldn't that be a rational thing to do?
Well, it's what everybody does. If you know successful people, you ask them questions all the time. Does that also make it insider trading?
Of course not. You know, if I know somebody that knows somebody in this case, Icahn wasn't an insider. He's not on the board of directors of Clorox. If Mickelson's friend was the best friend of a guy that was on the board of directors of a public company that was on the cusp of announcing that they were going to go chapter or that they had horrible news, and this guy revealed that to Phil, who then shorted the stock. Then, even then, I don't know. You know, Phil's didn't solicit the information. Phil doesn't know if the guy's telling the truth. He's not the one here that should be looked at. But even then, you got to wonder. You know, is that even then? Is it worth sending the FBI?
Well, and just to add some more context to this story, all this trading happened in 2011. They've been trying for 3 years to put together enough evidence against Mickelson to...
Actually, they have no interest in Mickelson. That's which is really amazing. They wanted to wiretap Mickelson. You know why? Because the feds have been trying to get at Billy Walters for years. The first thing they did with Billy Walters is said that he was running a bookie shop. As opposed to being a bettor, that he was running a bookie shop. And so the feds prosecuted him. And guess what? They lost. They took him to trial, and Billy Walters was exonerated of the charges that the feds trumped up against him. And then the next thing that they did is they accused Billy Walters, because the feds, they just hate to lose. The feds went after Billy Walters a second time. This time they went after him for money laundering, and they went into a safe deposit box that he had, and they confiscated tens of millions of dollars from him. And guess what? They lost again. They were required to hand it back. And so all they're doing right now is using the good reputation of Phil Mickelson to get at Billy Walters. You know, once you've lost twice with a guy, why not just leave him alone?
You should probably back off at that point.
Well, it's like you said, though. They don't like to lose, so now they're going to figure they'll keep throwing stuff until something sticks.
It's the ego. Yeah, it's like I want the laurels of bringing this guy down. Yeah, that's what the FBI does. What is the FBI doing in this kind of a case? And this is the Security and Exchange matter. Is the FBI now the arm of the Security and Exchange Commission?
Yeah, apparently they are, because they must be, right? And it's great that people that are supposed to be in charge of taking care of laws, when in a court of law, it said, well, this isn't right, he didn't do anything wrong. All of a sudden, then it becomes, well, then he did this wrong, or this wrong, and this wrong. How many things can you throw at somebody if you keep getting told that he did nothing wrong? At what point does that become a vendetta against Walters, as opposed to him actually being...
It is a vendetta. I mean, there's just no question. It's a vendetta. They are using Phil Mickelson's good name to promote their vendetta against Walters. The fact is that what Icahn is doing is not criminal. So there's nothing that the feds can do against Icahn, and they know it. And there's nothing the feds can do against Phil Mickelson. He is an innocent party here. Now, that doesn't mean that the feds can't lock Phil Mickelson up. They absolutely can. And the reason they can is feds don't play fair. I mean, it's this idea that if you're convicted in a court of law by the U.S. government that you committed the crime, it is not true. And so the feds can lock somebody up even though they've not done anything wrong. But the fact is, Phil Mickelson's out playing golf with this guy, and if he buys stock because this guy recommended the stock, I mean, how's that different than me going out and playing stock with my stockbroker or golf with my stockbroker?
Based on what you just said, they do that all the time. They call someone a flight risk. You're a flight risk, so you have to stay in jail. You know.
Oh, I know. It's absurd.
It's absurd. And if you're going to start, if two guys are playing golf and that is insider trading now,
oh my!
I mean, you might as well go to every boardroom in the country and grab everybody and start locking them up, because
and even if Walters told him, listen, Walters is famous for using computer analysis to make bets. And betting on sports and betting in the stock market, same thing. They're both gambling. When we've legalized betting in the stock market, and in many places we've legalized it, particularly in Las Vegas, betting on sports events, but they're both bets. They're both gambling. And if he had a computer model that says, Icon is still very active, and he's just now, this is his modus operandi, and these are the brokerage houses that he uses, and the size of the way that he normally goes into buying something, and he's used information that is public but difficult to come by, but you can find it by computers and analysis to ascertain when the Icon is about ready to buy into a company heavy, and he shares that with Phil. How is that illegal?
It shouldn't be. Like I said, it shouldn't be.
No, it shouldn't be. You know what? They've had a conniption fit today. There's another article about it. And the FBI is saying that the reason we are disappointed that all of this went public is because we were working to get and to increase the wiretaps on all three individuals, recognizing how difficult it would be to wiretap ICOM, but we were going to wiretap the others to listen into their conversations. America, land of the free, huh?
Yeah. Home of the ego.
This is really a can of worms. All right, next question, guys. Washington Redskins. Does it celebrate Indian heritage, or is it a racial slur? Degrading Native Americans.
Depends on who you ask, but the name itself sounds a lot like a racial slur. I mean, if we were to throw it any other color in front of skins, people would probably be up in arms about it.
Yep, that is true. Who are you calling me, a redskin?
Yeah, I know what you're driving at here, and I'd say they have to change it. It's not, if he wants to keep the same branding and everything like that, just call it the natives. The Washington natives.
What of course is funny is that we vilified the native population. We murdered them. We raped them. We stole their land. We presented them through our propaganda as if they were savages, and now our sports teams are named after them. Sort of ironic, isn't it? So, welcome back to Shattering Myths. For those that don't know, I am Sioux Indian, so I actually get to vote on this one. I don't find the Redskins name offensive. I don't find things that I find offensive are popular religious and political doctrine that create an environment where innocent people are harmed. So, I'm offended by Islam, for example. But offended by somebody could come up and say, "Hey, you redskin." I'm going to just laugh. My view of myself, with all the good things and bad things all thrown together, is not influenced one iota by what somebody says to me or about me. I just don't get the whole concept here. And by the way, if you interview, and they have taken polls of Native Americans, such as myself, 90% of us like the Redskins name and like the logo. It's only 10% of us of Native Americans who say, it's offensive.
And that seems to be the case with all of these stories that come out. I mean, the University of North Dakota are no longer the Fighting Sioux because a bunch of people that are not Sioux Indians got offended by it. The Sioux gave them permission to use the name.
Yeah, and, by the way, the Sioux were very effective fighters. I mean, that's one of the things that we were best, and I can use we here, that we were best known for. We were fighters. I mean, ask Custer how it worked out for him. So, if you're going to, have a team, like, for example, I hate Sparta. Sparta was amongst the most despicable countries and city-states in world history. This is the Greek city-state down in the far south of the Peloponnese Peninsula. And the way they enslaved people and the way that they established their military and the way that they treated their children, I found absolutely reprehensible. And yet you've got a school there in Michigan State, are the Spartans. And I went to a university that was named for the Trojans. I mean, what's the difference in Troy and naming a team after the Sioux?
None.
None. None. Yeah, I don't get I will tell you, I mean, absolutely. If you're going to have a name be offensive, if names are offensive racially, you can't have a more offensive name racially than Washington.
Well, how come the Fighting Irish aren't up in arms?
Yeah, really. As a matter of fact, I am also an Irishman, and and we Irish, we really don't fight. We gab, we drink, we party, we don't fight.
As of English descent, I can agree with that statement.
but by the way, even with that, I'm offended that Notre Dame chose Irish, because I despise Notre Dame, because I hate the Roman Catholic Church. And so for the Roman Catholic Church to identify with the other half of my racial background, I'm offended by that.
Here's a question for you.
Yes.
Can anybody really get offended for somebody else?
No, and that's what this
right.
is saying.
You really even shouldn't even get offended for yourself.
Well, I can only take offense for myself. I shouldn't have to take offense for somebody else.
Let's just say that you decide to call me a racial slur, a drunken Irishman and a no good Indian. Do you think that if you were to say that of me, that I'm going to say, oh boy, I'm offended, I'm really hurt, now I'm going to go and file a complaint, or am I just going to laugh?
Well, I mean, as somebody, I've played basketball pretty much my whole life. As a white guy in a basketball court, you hear some racial slurs thrown your way.
Right.
They never bothered me.
Of course not.
It didn't matter, because you just weren't playing.
Right.
But you can't get, if 10% of people are offended by it, so that means that we got to make those 10% feel okay. Why?
It's because being politically correct and aware, I guess, is a cool thing now. It's the same. I mean, people feel like they're getting something done. Oh, we'll get rid of Redskins and there'll be less racism in America.
It's the opposite of being aware, though.
Of course.
It's the opposite of being aware. Being aware means I can state what I think is going on based on the facts that I see around. And it's okay to do that.
When I wrote my history of America's 101 wars, the 101 wars America has fought since the first Europeans came and took this nation, this land, away from the indigenous people. The way that Americans dealt with the native peoples is just absolutely revolting. And so I just come back to it. Isn't it ironic that now in its sports teams, we name our sports teams after these people that we treated as if they were savages, when in fact we were the savages? We'll be back with more sports in the news after the commercial break. Shattering Myths, we'd like to transition now into more hypocrisy. Ursek is the owner of the Indianapolis Colts. He was arrested several months ago for being so far under the influence of, in this case it was of prescription drugs that he was taking in a non-prescribed quantity, that when the cops pulled him over, he hadn't even a clue where he was. And in the car with him were illegally acquired prescription painkillers and $29,000, which he was using to buy even more prescription painkillers. And yet he is still in control of the team, and there's been no sanction of any kind on it. What do you guys think about that?
Pretty hypocritical of the NFL. I think it's also, I mean, if the NFL doesn't try and take away his franchise, I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah. Look at the NFL. I think it was you, Aaron, that mentioned that if you're a player and you're tested positive for using marijuana, which is no different than using drinking scotch on the rocks. Even if you're doing so in your own home, you weren't driving behind the wheel of a vehicle, you weren't endangering anybody. First time, I think you're booted for 4 to 6 games, and the second time you can be booted and lose your paycheck for a whole season.
Yeah, Josh Gordon is actually one of the star players that it looks like he may be losing a full season to it, while you have an owner of one of the franchises not even getting a slap on the wrist for having oxycodone in his car, which is very, and while he's driving under the influence of it. I mean, the difference in the crimes here is so great, and
yes,
they're doing exactly the opposite of what they should be doing.
Correct. I think you ought to be able to poison yourself any way that you wish to, and I would get rid of the prescription requirement on drugs, and I'd make illegal drugs legal and encourage people not to take them. But if you wish to screw yourself up, that's your call. But when you get in a car and endanger other people, then that's a crime, and that's a serious crime. Just because it's like if I were to take out a gun and start shooting in the air. The fact that I didn't kill anybody doesn't diminish the seriousness of that crime. I'm putting other people's lives at danger. What this guy did is really dangerous and criminal.
Extremely. And they're not coming down on him at all while making examples of players that are caught testing positive for smoking marijuana, which they don't get caught driving around while they're high, nothing like that. They're just, like you said, it's equivalent to a scotch on the rocks.
Look at Josh Gordon. Yeah. And he just got busted, and the passenger in the car had marijuana.
Right.
And he's gonna have to. There's gonna be certain things that he's gonna have to go through for that.
Right. I think that if you're other than marijuana and using it recreationally in the privacy of your own home, I do think that you're stupid to use mind-altering drugs. Life is a challenge, and you really ought to play with your full faculties. But if the NFL does not suspend him for many years and apply an independent executive so that his family can't manage the team in the process, then they have no credibility, and they're going to seriously tarnish their brand.
Yeah, and it's already started with their players. The Ryan Clark said, it shows the hypocrisy. So the players are paying attention. They see what's going on. And if you don't think that's not going to have a major effect moving down the road,
serious.
You're not putting the pieces together.
You're right. Yeah, really serious. This is a grotesque issue of foul play, and you can't be credible and respond this hypocritically to someone. So this has to be a lot more than a $2 million fine. It has to be a lot more than a few months of isolation. He should not have been allowed to attend the players' meeting. He should not have been able to submit his stadium for an upcoming Super Bowl, and he should be suspended for a very long period of time, years.
As should anybody involved in the NFL that gets a DUI. I mean, it's a really serious crime. It should be taken seriously by the NFL.
Agreed. Suspending somebody for a long period of time for using human growth hormones so that they can heal more quickly doesn't appeal to me. But suspending somebody that endangers other people's lives by driving a vehicle so wasted they don't even know where they are, I'm all for that. There should be a very significant penalty for him or anybody that does it. The same thing, by the true, is I put up abuse towards women very high on my list of things you ought not do, and there should be really severe consequences. And so, if you beat up a woman, if you sexually assault a woman, or you're in a car while you're intoxicated, and there should be a serious consequence, player or owner, for that.
Well, one of those things is you're jeopardizing others. If you go take human growth hormone, I will feel no ill effects.
No.
There's no
really
effects on me.
care.
But if you're driving drunk and you hit someone, well, that could really hurt me. Or let's say you're dating my sister and you beat up my sister, that could have a pretty drastic effect on me.
But just beyond you, we ought to, as civilized individuals, feel compassion for and support of innocent victims. That's why I scream out at Islam for what they've done to these girls in Nigeria. I don't know any of these girls. They aren't related to me, but I feel great compassion for them, and we ought to lash out at those who put them in harm's way, just as Ursay did when he got drugged out of his mind and got behind the wheel of a car.
I would say that this is a much more delicate situation than some owner that has Alzheimer's disease making comments to his girlfriend, and I say that with air parentheses.
Yes.
I mean, this needs a much more harsh response than that. In personal opinion.
Yeah, let's turn to Donald Sterling. That was our first story of Sports in the News, and I said I introduced it by saying that I listened to the entire recorded interview, and I recognized that it had been recorded illegally, and made that point, that it was being used as blackmail, which is also illegal, and that he was not only led to making these statements, but that he was out of his mind, that he was no longer able to process what he was saying. And we have found out that for the last 5 years, Donald Sterling has suffered from Alzheimer's. He can't be held responsible for what he said.
No, while that makes a lot of sense and everything is kind of, I mean, it all makes sense now. I mean, he was out of his mind. He doesn't know what he's saying.
Correct.
They should probably lead with that next time, rather. I mean,
yes.
How many weeks has this been a story, and we're just now learning that?
Right. I mean, that's the very first thing that ought to. Now, by the way, as his physician, you can't divulge that information. The only reason it's now known is because his wife got control of the team because he was determined legally incompetent. So she got control over his half of the team because he was declared by a court based upon a psychiatric evaluation as being legally incompetent because of his Alzheimer's. That's the only reason we know about it now. But the fact is, it was obvious when I heard the poor man try to talk with this whore. And that's really what everyone, rather than everybody saying, he's got to go, there's no place for racism in the league, why didn't somebody in a position of authority say, the poor man's out of his mind. He's lost his mind. We ought to be feeling sorry for him. Sure, what he said is offensive, but he didn't know what he said. He's lost his mind. And sure enough, he did. He has Alzheimer's.
Yeah. Like Aaron said, though, why wasn't that what they led with? Because that didn't. The reason is because that didn't fit into what they wanted to, or what they were trying to do. That didn't fit into the lynching plan.
Right. I mean, there's no chance that a man that has Alzheimer's, had it for 3 to 5 years, there's no chance that in league meetings that someone in the league wouldn't have figured that out. And you just know it. And you talk to somebody. My mother-in-law. I mean, what a wonderful person. I mean, she just was so charming and so loving. And towards the end of her life, she lost her mental faculties. And she would talk about all sorts of things that were just absolutely crazy. Now, if I had demeaned her because she was hallucinating, that would have been really mean. Inappropriate, just as demeaning Donald Sterling because he has Alzheimer's. That's mean. You just, after a while, you just put your arm around them and you say, I'm sorry. I wish you weren't where you are, but you are. And you just love them. And that's really what we ought to have done with Donald Sterling is the league ought to have said, he's out of his mind. He's lost his ability to communicate, to reason. The tape was recorded by a whore engaged in blackmail using an illegal process. We don't have anything to stand on here. You know, there's a $1 billion suit right now against the league. And I don't know if the suit can be heard because of whether or not they have the right to bring the suit now that he has lost his mind, now that he has Alzheimer's. But if the suit can be brought, the NBA is going to lose. He didn't commit a crime. He's suffering from a disease. The NBA's response to this man who didn't commit a crime and is suffering from a disease, they'll lose the $1 billion if the trial actually takes place. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I don't see them coming out very well in this, so I do think they will lose, and for at least the $1 billion that he sued.
Yeah.
Nope. I don't think he'll win. I don't even think the lawsuit will even make it in.
Well, I think that there's a real chance the lawsuit could be dismissed, but it would only be dismissed for one of two reasons. One is that he has Alzheimer's, therefore he doesn't have the wherewithal to bring the suit. Or number two, that he wasn't harmed financially because he was still able to sell the team for $2 billion, therefore there's no financial harm. But on the merits of the claim that the NBA took advantage of a sick man who committed no crime based upon an illegal wiretrap and blackmail, he'll win on that. Welcome back to Shattering Myths and to sports in the news. Obviously, we all have some strong feelings about this. Scott, in your last comments, you were not saying that you didn't think that the case would prevail on its merits, that given that the evidence here, if it does go to court, the NBA is going to lose, but only that you don't think it'll go to court because of the fact that as a man who has now a mental illness, Alzheimer's, a disease that is affecting his cognitive abilities, that he doesn't have the right to bring the case.
Yeah, his wife is in charge of everything, and that's kind of what she signed papers that said that there'd be no future lawsuit brought against the team, and she was trying to do a bunch of things to protect her husband's appearance, and she wasn't trying to bring out that he has Alzheimer's and that she's in control. She's trying to keep that in the closet. And then when he brought the lawsuit with his lawyer, she came out and brought out, and that's how we found out that he had the Alzheimer's. Because she's like, you can't do that. We can't do that. So it's not because he doesn't have a case that can be made.
If he can bring the case, and he is deemed lucid enough, and that'll be more psychiatric evaluations, but if he's deemed lucid enough to bring the case, and the case does go to trial, I don't think the NBA has one chance in 100 of prevailing. I think they're going to absolutely get their clock claimed.
Well, if he sounds anyway he sounds in that tape, there's no way he's going to be able to do that. Because in that tape, even you said it yourself, he sounds like a man that has just tons of issues. And so,
mental issues.
So
but taking the team from a man who is sick isn't appropriate. I mean, it just isn't appropriate. What everyone in the league and in the media had to say about this man, condemning him, is inappropriate. He's sick. He has Alzheimer's. He didn't choose to get Alzheimer's. He has Alzheimer's. And this slut took advantage of him for the express purpose of she didn't like the fact that his wife was suing her for $1.8 million because his wife recognized that she was taking advantage of a mentally ill man to receive very high payments for sex. And so she recorded him for the express purpose of getting her to drop her lawsuit. It's blackmail. It's illegal recording of an individual. And you know, if it's brought to trial, Donald Sterling will win on the merits of the case. The only issue is, can he bring the case?
Yeah, and that's the only point I was making, is that if he's found that he can bring the case, obviously the NBA is they're going to be selling out $1 billion.
Yeah, but by the way, you don't have to be mentally competent to bring a case. Let's say that Stowe, the fan that was beat to a pulp by some goons in Los Angeles following a Dodger Giants game. He's not mentally competent now, but he can still bring a lawsuit.
Yeah, and then the other thing that I would add in is that when he's had Alzheimer's for, 3 to 5 years, he said?
Yes.
And this is our first hearing of it now.
Right.
The only reason that all this got out is he was being recorded illegally without his knowledge. With
Correct.
the amount of money and time that they will have to prepare before any court date, if one is set, I have no doubt in my mind that they will be able to present the case. That he will be able to present it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's it makes the whore that solicited the $1.8 million for having sex with the old guy, and then recorded him illegally, and then used it as blackmail. Boy, she is really looking bad.
Yeah, definitely. Well, she didn't look good to begin with, so but true, who she really is really starting to come out now.
It certainly is. And my guess is she doesn't have enough money to pay for the kind of legal representation she's going to need, and she's going to lose the $1.8 million case to Shelley.
And I don't know, a lot of people say that, oh, she can write a book, a tell-all book or whatever. But I don't know many publishing places that are going to want to tell our book to how I took advantage of a senile old man
with Alzheimer's.
I mean, that's not a book that anybody wants to buy.
Somebody will buy it on it, but I'm not sure it'll do very well.
But I think the bottom line here is that all the people that, because there's two issues that you can't talk about today because of political correctness. One is anything to do with race, and the other is homosexuality. All those people that jumped on the bandwagon with a holier-than-thou attitude and condemnation of the man should apologize. It's not that what he said is appropriate. It's that he had no control over what he said. He's a sick man. You don't kick sick men. It's disgusting what we did. We'll return to Shattering Myths after the commercial break. Thank you, guys.